The mother mold is now prepped and ready to do some of the roto casting or slush casting, whatever you want to call it. I've already done a few masks following this process, and I've kind of figured out while doing the first couple like how much I need, how many layers to do, and whatnot. So now that I have it kind of down for what I'm doing, now I'll show you the process I've figured out. First thing is I've bolted it all together, got the silicone in there, and I've already put in the baby powder inside, moved it all around so everything was well coated, and blew it out with air. Now one thing is that with this mold, the rubber or the silicone comes down nice and far, except for right here. And the first one I did, the Rotocast or the whatever you're using does come out of the mold a bit, and if you don't have it dripping out, then you're not getting enough at the bottom. So it is going to make a mess. Now the first coat made this, and getting it apart was a really big pain. So now what I do, and which I will do, is take some like green painter's tape, and I basically just lift the silicone, put the tape underneath, and wrap it around, so that once the mask is done, then I can just pop the tape off, and then the smooth cast will just kind of pop off a lot easier, other than trying to get it to separate from this mother mold. But yeah, so it's pretty simple. You just mix your smooth cast. I have smooth cast 300, which cures white, and I have smooth cast onyx, which goes black. The reasoning I did this is one, the 300, I have a bit more time to play with it, so make sure I get a good coating, and because it dries like a nice white color, less work having to try to paint it and such. Then the onyx sets up faster and also creates heavier coats or thicker coats a lot faster. So I'm doing 2 coats of the 300 at about 6 ounces each, so 12 ounces total, and then 2 coats of the onyx at 4 ounces of each, so 8 ounces total. So not really good at math on the fly, but you can figure that out. And then I've got my like red solo cups for mixing in. These are nice and big, so it's good for doing bigger batches. And then these paper cups are really inexpensive, but they're pretty small. So what I do is I measure with these, measure the amount I need, pour it in the solo cup, and then mix it in the solo cup. I also got my nice big mixing sticks from Walmart. They're super cheap from Walmart, so that's where I would get them. And yeah, so like I said before, I've already done a few, which you can see here. And I was playing around with the amount to use. So that's the original. And then I did this one, which I did a thin coat of the 300. But as you can see, a lot of the black kind of showed through still. This one actually also still has the slag on the bottom, so you can see how it kind of comes out the bottom there. And this is like where the tape is that I was showing you before. And but so that one was a little kind of not enough white. This one I was doing better. I've already started trimming this one, so you can see how the inside is nice and black, but the outside is going white, but at the back it was still kind of not perfect. And here I've gone even closer. I've trimmed it even a bit more and started filling it in a bit for sanding and finishing. I'll go over all the finishing and stuff on a separate video. Now the one thing is like I said, having all the slag on the bottom, along the bottom, to make it really strong, because it's a big hole cut out after, you need to make sure that it's nice and stiff there, or else it'll just crack and fracture. So this one I've already trimmed, but you can see, well, I don't know if you can see, but it's pretty thick, like, you know, it's almost the width of my pinky. And what I've done, and I doubt you'll be able to see it in the video, but I'll show you by describing it, is first of all, when I'm after every coat, I set the mask on this box. You can see all the smooth cast that's just been dripping down onto the bottom of the box. And so what I do is I rotate it, rotocast it, move it around, and then once I've got it so it's kind of thickening and there's not going to be too much dripping, then I set it up on the box, and that allows any excess to run out the bottom, and it starts building a nice thick coating all along the bottom, because that's where I really need it the thickest. I don't need it the thickest up at the top because there's no holes cut here. The eyes have so much detail and these thick eyebrows and stuff, and it just naturally just gets nice and thick around the eyes by itself. And they're small, they're not that big a hole, so it's nice and stiff there. But the bottom is where you want it nice and strong. So one way that I make it nice and strong is use fiberglass. What I do is I do the first coat of the 300, I do the second coat of the 300, then I put the fiberglass down. So while it's still sticky, and it'll be very sticky, I just take the fiberglass mat and I just lay it in on the inside. And I just kind of sit there and add a layer, add a layer, add a layer, and I've cut them so they're pretty wide. I don't need to fiberglass the whole inside the mask, but just this bottom like 2 inches. So I stick it on there, overlapping, and stick it all the way around. Then I do the onyx, and the onyx, or the smooth 300, whatever you're using, will really soak into the webbing really nicely, actually. And that's just giving it a bit more strength and rigidity to stop it from cracking or flexing or anything like that. And if it does flex, this will help it, almost like rebar and concrete, it'll help it to stop any sort of cracking or fractures or anything like that. But it's still really light. So it just helps with thickening the bottom, adding some internal strength, and allowing it to stay fairly light. So what I'll do is I will mount the camera on the tripod and kind of show you how I do it. So I'll probably fast forward pretty much all of it, because it takes a good hour and a bit to do all 4 coats. But you'll see me do the first coat, which is a 300, second coat of the 300, and then putting in the fiberglass, then the 2 coats of the onyx. And usually that's good. At most, I might have to do 1 more coat of onyx after, just to make sure I get all the fiberglass covered on the bottom. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. I let this set up for a good day. There's a set time, like a cure time for the smooth cast, and it's depending on what it is that you're using, but it can be anywhere from, I think, like say half an hour to a couple hours, and that's where they say like the demold time is, and that's when you can safely take whatever you've cast out of the mold. But from what I had watched and read, and what I believe to be correct, is that the longer, if you can let it fully cool down before you demold it, your mold will last you a lot longer. And I really want to try to get this mold to last as long as possible, so I've really kind of left it. I like leaving it for at least a day, and that gives it time to fully cure, cool down, and gives me an opportunity to demold it. And taking the getting this thing demolded, it's actually quite difficult. It's a lot harder than you'd think it would be. Now I don't know if that's just because it's like this big round object, and the round object is harder to get out of the mold and the mother mold and such. And I think it just kind of depends on what it is that you've cast. Tape, as you can see, I'm doing the tape right now. The tape actually comes off really easily, and some of the slag you can just break off. But what you have to do is you basically have to get the mother mold off. Once the mother mold's off, then you can pull the silicone off the mold. And getting the mother mold off, really, I think it can either be really hard or really easy. And it just depends on how you made your mother mold. I thought that I was being really clever and good and made sure that the keys weren't, say on the side and the side, because then pulling the mother mold off this way with keys on the side is too difficult. So I put them fairly close to the center. Even with these centered like that, and they're just going out to the side a bit, it is really difficult for me to get the mother mold off. A lot more difficult than I was hoping. So when you're doing your mother mold, you definitely want to think about that. Now there is always going to be you can see how a bunch has dripped out and gone on the edge. And usually what I do is I just take, like a scraper or something like that, and you just try to break it free. And you can kind of see how I just broke it there, and now it's kind of free there. Same thing here, you can try to get as much off as possible and then break it free. And then once it's free, then you'll be able to get the mother mold off. But until then, if I just tried, it would just stick on there. And I really don't want to, I want to get as many casts out of this silicone as possible. So now that I've got the slag pretty much all broken off, it's not gripping on there anymore. There's a little bit here, but that should separate. So the next step is to take all the bolts out. All the bolts are out now. And now comes the fun part. Let's try to get this thing to split. Generally what I do is I just like to take my tools and I made this mother mold as strong as I thought I could. But you don't want to just get in there and just start prying like crazy, because it's very possible that it's going to break. And like I said again, if you're doing more than one, you don't want this thing to just snap. So start separating. Down here is going to be the strongest point, right? This joint. So that's split. And now it's just all about muscling this thing off. So there's half of it, and the front half, this half, like the face half, always comes off easier because it's not 100% down the center, exactly 50-50. So this back half is always tighter to get off. Whew. Okay, it's off. And as I'm sure you just could see, that was quite a fight to get that off. And now, the next fun part, trying to get the silicone off. Now in my previous videos, I kind of showed how I kind of screwed up and made it too thin in the back, and then the silicone ripped. And within the last however many times I've done some casts, it's ripped a bit more and more, so it's just kind of progressively getting worse and worse, how bad the tear is. So it's just kind of this mold's only got so much life in it. But it's been doing pretty good so far. It just means more work for me to clean it up. And with the, so there's one tear, and then there's the second tear is right there. And this kind of keeps going. And what I've found to be the best way to get this off is to kind of start at the back, split it all the way up, and there we go. So what I find works really well is getting the mold and kind of holding it up like that, getting a bubble going, and then working that bubble across to split the mold from the mask. Because it's kind of all grippy in there. Once it's all loose, then the mask comes out pretty easy. But if you just try to peel this off, then what happens is those tears just get worse and worse and worse. So I just like to go around the bottom, make sure the bottom, because the bottom's kind of where it can really stick. But once the bottom's split, like so, then I just kind of keep doing what I was just doing. Take this and force it up. Continue that bubble. I don't know if you can see that, but just kind of separate it. There we go. And I can just kind of hear it, the whole thing just kind of release. And then it's just a matter of splitting. Pulling out. Whoa. The static electricity on this thing is crazy. It's amazing. And there we go. Kind of hard to see. I'll move the mold. And once your mold is out, you want to put it right back in your mother mold. You don't want to leave your silicone like this. So, a bit of dirt and stuff got on there. Wipe it off. But you definitely want to get this back in so it holds its shape. There we go. So, again, you just want to do this to make sure that your mold stays in its best shape as possible so you can get as many pulls out of it as possible. For how much money and effort it goes into making one of these, you don't want to leave it just silicone just lying around for a week and then go to use it and go, oh man, there's like this weird crease or something like that, or this, you know, it shouldn't really happen, but it doesn't take too long to just do that. Let's see how this turned out. There we go. Looks pretty good. Nice and thick along the bottom. Yeah, feels pretty good. So the next step is doing some trimming. And over here you can see, I don't know if it shows well in the video, but you can see the seam here. And then where the tears are, one tear there and one tear here. And right here it's It's a little lumpy from where the mold or the mother mold isn't perfect, so it just doesn't get a absolutely perfect smooth texture. But a little bit of filler, some sanding, and that'll look good. And this mold line should be pretty easy, you know, sand it all down and then a little bit of filler just to smooth it out. But otherwise, it all looks pretty good. Not bad. Very light too. That's one nice thing about this. And then looking on the inside, you can see how it looks with the black in there. So we'll see. You know, it feels pretty hard. Feels pretty rigid. Next time I might do one more coat. Around the eyes is pretty thin, so we'll see how thin it is around the eyes. Just make sure that it cuts nicely, and I'll trim this one up and see how it is. But like I said, I've been playing with the amount of material that I've been using. So the next time I do it, maybe I'll use a little bit more 300, a little bit more onyx, just to get slightly thicker coats. But otherwise, it looks good. And the nice thing about the white is it's already, you know, I'll still use a primer. I'm still going to use a primer. I'll probably end up using a gray primer, but the white definitely makes it a good base to start from, color-wise. And also sanding-wise, it really shows all the little imperfections, like there's some little dimples here kind of thing. And I'll go in and fill those in and make them so that it's as good as possible. But yeah, looks pretty good. Looks pretty good to me, and hopefully it'll turn out well once it's all trimmed up. So the next video I'll do, I'll trim out the eyes, trim out the neck, trim out the mouth, and just kind of sand them. So once those are all nice and sanded and that's good, then I'll sand down the seams. I'll sand down the seams, do a little bit of filler, and once that's done, painting, mounting a helmet. All right.